All right, so it does not get bigger than this. Voting has come to a close in many states across the United States of America. Counting has begun, and according to the reports that are emerging in the American media, Donald Trump is projected to win crucial states of West Virginia, Mississippi. Joe Biden is also being projected to win the crucial states of New Jersey, Connecticut, Delaware, and Massachusetts. Remember, these are still early projections, although many of the media outlets may be stating that they've already won these states. These are still early projections on the basis of the votes that have been counted. Donald Trump is likely to take Indiana and Kentucky, while Joe Biden is being given Vermont. The polls have closed in the first 7 U.S. states, including in Georgia. Ballot counting is underway in the battleground state of Pennsylvania. Another interesting development is Republican leader Mitch McConnell has won his re-election to the Senate. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what is to be expected as the counting of votes has now begun, we are joined in by Bernard Whitman, who is a pollster associated with the Democrats. And Mr. Whitman, thank you very much indeed for joining us in this broadcast on WION. And let me begin by asking you this. As the counting of votes has begun, how confident do you think will the Democrats in fact be of in fact seeing through in this crucial election?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I think the watchword here is caution. I am cautiously optimistic that Joe Biden will win. We have some great internal numbers that we're getting from states like Ohio, which Trump must win, states like North Carolina, which Trump must win, with Joe Biden actually ahead. Now, there's still a fair amount of counting that has to be done, but Donald Trump has a very, very narrow path to electoral victory. Of course, we use the Electoral College here in the United States. Joe Biden has many paths. If Donald Trump were to lose North Carolina, for example, or lose Ohio, for example, and we may know this in the next hour or two, he will not be the next president. Joe Biden will become the next president.
I think you're making a pretty bold claim there. You're stating that this is something where you're stating that the path for presidency for Donald Trump is very narrow, and he needs to win many of these crucial swing states. The Trump camp would be looking at it slightly differently. They would say that, look, yes, the path is narrow, but it is doable because Donald Trump managed to do it in 2016.
No, absolutely. I mean, no one should count Donald Trump out. And we all, as Democrats, have PTSD from last time around. But the truth is, Joe Biden could afford, for example, to lose Florida and lose Pennsylvania. And if he wins Arizona, then he becomes the next president, assuming that he actually does win Michigan and Wisconsin, where he is currently ahead and expected to win. So there are many opportunities for Joe Biden to win. I think Donald Trump can win. I think a greater risk, though, than Donald Trump actually winning outright is using voter suppression, voter intimidation, and judicial activism in the courts to try to steal the election. I think this is a real threat to our democracy, but hopefully one that will not be seen, because if Joe Biden can manage to win, for example, as I mentioned, North Carolina or Ohio in the next few hours, then I think Republicans will not support any type of Trump shenanigans to try to steal the election out from under Joe Biden.
All right, it's interesting that you mentioned that these are crucial states, the results of which will be declared in the next couple of hours. But for people who are looking at this election from a distance, the process of counting of the ballots appears to be extremely complicated. Different states follow different procedures and timelines for actually counting all of these ballots. Talk us through as to why is this process this complicated? Why don't all the states in the United States have pretty much the same procedure?
That's a very good question. And it sort of is similar to, why do we have an electoral college? Why don't we just have a winner take all? And the answer is, we are, in fact, the United States of America. We are one country, but we're made up of 50 states plus the District of Columbia. And so therefore, each state has their own laws. Now, for example, mail-in ballots, we had, as you mentioned, over 100 million people voted before the sun rose this morning. That's about 75% of all the votes that occurred last time around. Some states like Florida and Ohio count these absentee votes as they come in. Some states like Pennsylvania, for example, Michigan, Wisconsin, don't. And so if it comes down to a Pennsylvania is going to be potentially the deciding factor, if that's the case, we may not know for days, and with potential court challenges, we may not know for weeks. So depending on which states are close and which states are clear winners for either Trump or Biden, we may know as soon as tonight, or we may not know for several weeks.
And also the fact, you touched upon the fact that 100 million voters had already cast their votes even before polling began earlier this morning. And the fact that, this is what Joe Biden's camp had been saying all along. Try vote in as much as possible and as early as possible. Do you think the 100 million voters actually puts Joe Biden in the lead, and the voting that took place today effectively was Donald Trump playing catch up?
Well, in some respects, I think that is true. We did a lot of polling and showed that the earlier someone was likely or actually did vote, the more likely they were to vote for Joe Biden. People that voted several weeks early, in some cases, were voting for Biden over Trump by 50 plus points. Now, Donald Trump clearly has an advantage, we think, for people who are voting today. So he has to turn out his vote. It's actually a little bit more challenging for him because he has to turn out his vote today. A lot of our votes on the Democrat side are already locked. So it's going to really depend, frankly, on whether Donald Trump can motivate enough of his supporters to come out and vote in the middle of a pandemic versus the Democrats, who still need a lot of turnout today, but we have a lot of votes already locked in.
And also, Mr. Bernard, how soon do you expect the result of this election to come out? Because a lot of people, of course, would be saying that, look, in the past, election results have come out as soon pretty much on the night of voting. The ballots would be counted, and then you would have the election results out within about 12 hours. But this time around, it's a lot more complicated.
Yes, and I would say, again, it comes down to which states Biden wins and by how much. So, for example, if Joe Biden clearly wins North Carolina, I think we may be able to understand that Joe Biden is the next president before we go to bed at around midnight. If Joe Biden loses, if Trump wins Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and Georgia, which he must win, we may need to wait and see what happens to Arizona. Now, Arizona's polls close in about an hour, about 15 minutes. And so we should start getting results from there actually relatively soon. And then if Arizona actually goes for Biden, we still might know. But if Trump wins Arizona, as he did last time, and Trump wins those other states, then we may have a very, very long night. And in fact, as I mentioned, we may have a few weeks to go with court challenges.
Absolutely, indeed. And also earlier in the day, we heard Donald Trump speak at the RNC. And a lot of people, in fact, commented on the body language of Donald Trump. He looked a bit fatigued. It's understandable that he's been addressing a lot of rallies. He's addressed about 18 rallies in the last 3 days. That could have been one of the factors. But also he sounded a little bit more subdued than the Donald Trump that we have otherwise known. Would you like to read a lot in that body language that Donald Trump projected earlier this morning?
I'm not going to sort of psychoanalyze what he happened to look like because I'm sure the guy's exhausted. I'm sure Joe Biden is exhausted. Everybody that's been working on these campaigns is incredibly fatigued. What I'm encouraged by is that I believe, assuming that all the votes are counted, that this is a huge win for democracy. We have not had a turnout of 2/3 of the voting eligible public in more than 100 years, meaning the last time we had turnout of 65+% was in 1908. I think we're going to blow past that. I think we're going to have more people voting, both in absolute numbers and as a percentage than ever before. I think this will be a huge victory for democracy, and I'm hopeful that voters will end up deciding to vote for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. And some of the exit polls are very encouraging. We asked people in states like Florida and Georgia and Virginia, which was more important, getting the economy back or getting coronavirus clamped down. And people now understand what Joe Biden has been saying. The key to economic revival is getting a handle on the virus. And most voters want the virus under control even before the economy is reopened.
And just before I let you go, one of the issues that's been spoken about a lot is what Donald Trump has been talking when it comes to the question of a smooth transition of power. Do you think Donald Trump could create issues, especially because of the controversy that he has raised time and again, and even earlier this morning, that because there is such a high percentage of mail-in ballots, he says that there is a high probability that there could be fraud that could take place, and he may not want to accept a result that may go against him?
I'm very concerned about that. In fact, he has said time and time again, the only result that he would accept is with his winning. Now, I think a big difference will be if it is quite clear that Joe Biden has built up enough of an electoral college lead that Donald Trump cannot get enough Republican support to stay in office, to battle through the courts, to sort of try to last this out and use sort of judicial activism to try to remain in office. If it's very, very close and we're coming down to, for example, Pennsylvania, we have to count the mail-in ballots and that would decide the election, then I think we're in for a very long, rough ride. And in fact, we may have a serious threat to democracy.
All right, Bernard Whitman, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this broadcast from WION.